Well, I do want to thank you for coming tonight. This is a little bit of a different type of presentation, but I do appreciate you being here. And let me talk to you just a little bit about the project itself. This capstone project was a part of my Master's of Ministry program through Warner University. And it's kind of the pinnacle of everything that we have done through this process. When I get this behind me, it's hallelujah time because we're going to finally have everything taken care of. Now, there were several goals that we were shooting for as a part of the project. One was we were to identify a pressing congregational need. And once we had identified that need, then we were to design some method or a manner in which to address that need to see if we could not correct whatever was missing or whatever deficit may have been present. Another thing we were looking for was leadership development, because the purpose or part of the capstone project was to identify potential leaders in the church, and I'm going to introduce to you in just a little while the folks that helped me on that leadership ministry team, and I'm going to tell you why in particular that I picked them. So here's the project that we came up with. We decided we needed to reclaim a missing generation. Let's talk just a little bit about church history. This is my second time around to pastor Scott Memorial. When we left in 2003, we were averaging an attendance of about 160 to 170. We were a healthy church, we were strong, we were financially sound. When we came back in 2012, the congregation had declined from 160 down to 60. And the majority of people who had left the church were younger families. And with younger families went children. And looking out at the congregation, my first Sunday back, it was like visiting a senior citizens complex. Linda and I were the youngest ones here. And so we definitely had a need, and that need is, and still is, to try to recapture the generation that has vacated the church. So what caused it? Well, there are a lot of factors, both internal and external. Let's look at the external factors. The city of East Ridge has been in decline for over 10 years. The population has decreased dramatically, and as the population has decreased, the number of permanent residents living in East Ridge has decreased as well. And the result is, instead of established families in property ownership, more homes are being rented in our vicinity than are owned. In fact, an East Ridge demographic study that was done about 6 years ago showed that from Moore Road back to Interstate 75, 70% of the homes in that area are being rented. So the city of East Ridge is looking at decline itself. Now the church has suffered from that decline because some of the people who have moved out of East Ridge were people who were a part of our church. And so as they have moved away, they have not made the effort to try to drive back into East Ridge to continue with the church. Rather, they have either found a church closer to where they are living, or they are not going to church anywhere at all. But here again, the primary population that is missing are young adults with families. Now, Scott Memorial Church has been located here in East Ridge and has had an active ministry for nearly 7 decades in this particular location. And this capstone project is a part of continuing the effort to ensure that the church has a great future as well. Because we do have a solid history in which to build on. So let's go back to the beginning. Scott Memorial was founded in 1949 as a church plant by John R. Harris. it's interesting to take into consideration that there are still people here in the church today that knew Brother Harris. You know, that was a long time ago, but his legacy continues to impact the life of the church here today. Now, in her 68 years of ministry, Scott Memorial has served the community under the leadership of 8 different pastors. Besides Dr. John R. Harris, they've been Reverend Gene Fauntleroy, Reverend Harold Morton, Reverend Kerry Robinson, Reverend Mike Sturm, Reverend Larry Earl, Reverend Tim Sharp, and yours truly. And my name should be in that list twice, but I'll just give it to you once. Now, on many occasions during the church's history, the congregation has numerically run between 150 and 200 in attendance. Now, when you factor in seasons of want and seasons of plenty, the attendance and the involvement with Scott Memorial over the years has been steady and consistent, that is, until the past 10 to 12 years. And what we have seen in that past 10 to 12 years has been a period of decline. So, that brings us to the project. Why did we decide to go in the direction that we did? Because for the past decade, Scott Memorial has been a declining congregation, with the principal loss being young families. So the pressing congregational need that we identified was this: there's a generation missing from the church, and we need to come up with some way to begin reintroducing them to the church. And for some, introducing them for the first time. So, here's what I did. I put together a leadership team. And a leadership team helped me come up with the process of trying to determine what it is that we wanted to do, what approach we wanted to take. Now, as the team was being assembled and as they began to gel together, I shared with them, and there were 3 congregational goals that we really wanted to found our work on, and I want to share those with you. We wanted to help the church understand its particular situation and its circumstance. We needed to get the church to take a good look at where we are and what we're facing. And then we needed to help them develop a church vision that's faithful to their best understanding of God and God's purpose for the congregation. And finally, help the church embody that vision in the congregation's corporate life while attempting to address various challenges that may arise. So, I put together a team. And that team was Tommy Kennedy, Emily Martin, and Linda Pinter. And I'd like for Tommy to stand and turn around. I'd like for the folks that are going to be viewing this to see what you look at that handsome face. That's Tommy Kennedy. Linda, if you will stand, please. And of course, Emily Martin was the 3rd member. Emily has a sick child tonight. Thank you. She was not able to come, but she played a very vital role in what we were doing. This picture that you're looking at on the screen is the only group picture we took. You have to understand how hard it is to take a selfie with somebody as tall as Tommy and somebody as short as Linda and get them all in the picture at one time. That in itself was a challenge. So the team began to meet and began to pull together and work on the capstone project. What was the pressing congregational need? We identified the need: missing generation. How do we reach them? And we came up with this concept, the idea of a ministry fair, and we use that as a vehicle to introduce unchurched families to Scott Memorial Church. Now, the big question was, how are we going to get young families to give up part of a Saturday just to come to the church to see what we offer? That was a challenge. And we decided, and this was Linda's idea, let's piggyback the ministry fair onto the annual Easter egg hunt. We'll already have a hook there to get young families with children on our campus. And while they're here, let's hit them with the best picture we can of what the church has to offer. So now here's the value of a team. I told you Linda came up with the idea of attaching the fair to the Easter egg hunt. Emily's the one who thought of the ministry fair. And so the team began to work together, and that became our goal. And once the project was in place, we began setting target dates along the way as we met. There were phases that we completed, and as we did, we got into some very serious times of planning. I estimate over a 16-month period of time, we probably met 12 times. And in those 12 times, we planned, we worked, we schemed, we threw ideas out on the table. Some ideas had to be slept on. Tommy didn't know I got that picture of him in there. And as we worked through the process, we more and more began to understand the direction that we felt the Holy Spirit was taking us in this. Now, as we began to define the project, team members began to take on responsibilities. And part of those responsibilities was to recruit volunteers. And those volunteers would come alongside of us and help us as we began to put the project together. We knew we were going to need help because there were 4 of us that were sitting around the table. And this was a bigger idea, a bigger project than 4 people could do. And so we wanted to get other people to help, but another reason we wanted volunteers to help us was we wanted this to be a church-wide effort. We didn't want it just to be us. We wanted it to be the church stepping out, trying to reach different people. So we recruited volunteers, we made assignments, we trained, all those things were completed. And as we got close to the event, the night before, we began setting things up. And we had several people who came to help us in a wide variety of different ways to help us put things together and get things organized. It took us about 2.5 hours Friday night, and we were ready to go for Saturday morning, and we prayed. When everything was said and done and everything was set in place, we prayed that it would work. Now, we wanted people to register as they came in. That registration table was very strategically placed so that everybody who came into the building had to go by it. But how do you get people to stop and put their information down on a piece of paper? So we decided we need a hook. And our hook was, we're going to give away an iPad. But you had to register to get your name in the hat. And that iPad registration encouraged a lot of people to sign up. In fact, we had more people register for this particular event than any other block party or Easter egg hunt or anything else we've ever done in the past. And I was pleased about this. The winner of the iPad was a first-time guest on our church property. I made sure that none of the church people's names went in the hat because I wanted it to be a gift for somebody who was here brand new. So it worked. The iPad hook really worked. So the LMT and the volunteers set everything up. We got the registrations we need. People began to come, and this is what they saw. We had display booths that were set up very strategically that highlighted the ministries of the church. Tommy was in charge of our logistics and the floor plan, and he did a great job in designing a floor plan with the church, with those portable dividers that we have that channeled people towards the back of the Family Life Center. And as they were channeled towards the back, they had to go past every one of the tables that we had set up that had highlighted ministries. So good job, Tommy. That solved a great problem of trying to figure out how do we get people to stop and take a look at what we had. Now, what did we talk about? We had a booth that talked about specialized ministries, the CWC, worship, music, our missions and faith promise. and Roberta Kirchhoff manned that table and did a great job for us. There was youth and children's ministries highlighted, and Mason stood there and manned her post through the whole event, answering any questions that people had as they came along. Young adult ministry, I don't know who was at that table, but there was a different person there every time I came by. But there was always an interested group of folks asking questions. And then there was senior adult ministry, and Bonnie did a great job in putting that together. Now, the event itself was centered around engaging children. We wanted to be sure that children were a focus of what we were doing. But above that, we wanted to carry out the Great Commission that was one of our underlying goals in this whole process, and that was to make disciples. So during the event, we shared the gospel with people. We used, Linda did a Bible story with the felt board. I think Harvey showed up, but the idea was to share the gospel and then to challenge people to come to know Jesus Christ. And we had a great opportunity to lay the gospel out for some folks that I'm certain had not heard. Now, we fed body and soul, and then we turned the kids loose for the Easter egg hunt. And that was like throwing a firecracker into a yard full of turkeys. It was just a wild explosion. So let me give a summary for what took place. The planned event, which was the ministry fair, was successful in that we were able to secure information on many unchurched families with children. And every registered family received a follow-up text message within 24 hours of the event. Now, I know this is true because I sent them. And it was an encouragement to me that of all the people that I texted, about half of them responded with either a thank you or a word of appreciation for the church putting the event together and for that they enjoyed themselves and were happy to be introduced to the church and whatever. Now, the leadership ministry team performed with excellence. They carried out every one of their responsibilities and they went beyond. And those who were recruited and volunteered served very well. And all of the anticipated goals that we had for the event were either met or exceeded. Now, Easter Sunday fell the next day after the ministry fair. 3 unchurched families who visited us at the ministry fair came the next day for worship. And 2 of those families are worshiping with us now 3 months later. Miss Kathy, we're glad to have you and your family as a part of ours. And so that brings me to the conclusion. What about the future? What this did prove to us is this. Events like this work. But they take work. It takes effort in order to see fruit produced. So what is our future? What are the options that we have? Well, let me lay these out for you to think about. Our first option is this. We need to realize that there is a great multicultural change taking place in our neighborhood. And the approach that we have to ministry has got to keep that change in mind. A second option is relocate the church and sell the existing property to somebody who will take a multicultural ministry approach and strive to reach the neighborhood. I'm not real crazy about that option. And then the third option is do nothing, keep declining, and wait for the day that we lock the doors for the last time. I really don't like that option. But what all of this has proven to me is this. We have potential still. Let me tell you why I picked Tommy, Emily, and Linda. Tommy's been a part of the church for how many years, Tommy? 17 years. Now, over the years, he has served in different positions. He's been on boards, he's been on committees. I believe he told me that the last time he got off of a board, he ran out the door screaming, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, I'm free at last." But he hasn't been in a per se recognized leadership position for several years. Am I correct on that? All right. Emily Martin is a single mother. But when Emily was a little girl, her mother was our nursery attendant. And Emily and her 3 siblings attended church here as children, but then they moved away. Well, now they are back in the area. Emily has a little girl that is 9, and she wanted her daughter to have the same exposure to the gospel that she had when she was a child. And so out of the blue, about 2 years ago, Emily and Mackenzie just showed up. Now, I picked Emily for the leadership ministry team because she has fresh eyes. She has a history with the church, but she has been away from the church for a long time, and so she comes in and sees it from a whole different venue than those of us that are here and have been here a long time. Now, Linda, my wife, was not an original pick for the team. Don't tell her that. She exited the room for a minute. Don't tell her, but I had another individual in mind and was just before asking them and inviting them to serve, and they had a major family crisis that was obviously going to occupy a lot of their time, and I never asked them. But it was getting down to the crunch time, and I needed to have a 4th team member, and so I asked Linda, and I'm glad I did because, and this is why I married her, she has great administrative skills, and she helped us with all of the technical, the scheduling and everything that went into that, the setup and all. So that was my team. And they were the ones who made the project successful. And the church did a tremendous job in responding. It was great to watch them welcoming new people in, and see them involving them and trying to make them feel at home, letting them know that we want them to be at home. And so we do have great potential. And the potential will be achieved if we're willing to pay the price.